You're listening to That's Absurd. Please Elaborate, a podcast where we answer strange, absurd, outlandish, and weird science questions that you send in, and we find the answers and we tell you all about them. So here we are. My name is Trace Dominguez. I am one of, let's see, if we were an alphabet, I guess I would be the A to N. And then I'm here with Julian.
Okay, yes. Hi, I am Julian Huguet, and I am the O to Z.
Okay.
LMN. Is it bad that I had to go through that part of the alphabet in my head to know what came after N? I wasn't going to say anything,
but yeah, kind of. Is
that
kind of bad, yeah.
Is that bad?
No, it's totally normal.
I think that should tell you a lot about who we are, right there.
Yeah.
Well, first, I wanted to count. Like, did you get, like, is N the 13th letter of the alphabet?
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. I don't know. I lost count.
J is the 11th. No, K is the 11th.
Oh, wow.
So you're the M and I'm the N. Unless, wait, are you saying you're more important than me? Do we have beef here?
I was just splitting the alphabet in half. I wasn't saying you're more important. No way, I would never.
You split it unfairly, sir. Although I do get S in my portion, which is the most commonly used. You know what? We've already gone off the rails. Anyway, welcome, listener.
Hello, I'm Trace again, and I'm here with Julian, and we are science communicators. And again, we're answering questions that our audience members sent in. But this week is a special case because we didn't just have this question sent in. Julian is going to answer a question that you picked. You, the audience.
Yes,
through our polling.
Okay. Caveat. Right.
Oh, right. Caveat, yeah.
As many of you are aware, we have launched a Patreon, patreon.com/that'sabsurdshow.
Yes.
And the entire premise of it, to be totally democratic, was like, no matter what level you sign up for, you get to vote on polls, a selection of questions that we put up, and you can tell us one question that we can answer. And my very firm conviction was that, like, it doesn't matter what level you sign up at, everybody should be able to vote on it, right? It's all democratic here. I'm almost immediately becoming corrupted, though, because our first poll, we had a definitive winner. It was a four-way tie there for a hot minute.
Yeah.
But ultimately, one question won out, but three were still tied. And I was having trouble picking questions when we met to discuss. And you suggested, you know what?
I had this idea, yeah.
Why don't we see from that poll what our very first Patreon, Alfonso, what he voted for.
Thank you, Alfonso.
And we are going to give Alfonso a sort of super delegate mega vote.
Yeah.
Where, to heck what everybody else says, because Alfonso is in first, their choice is what I will select. And I thought, yeah, I'm down. You know, I'm up for a little corruption. So, in the remaining three-way tie, he actually picked one of those tied questions, and that question came from Nick. Question was, what would a Star Wars blaster and or ray gun be like if it could exist? It's a classic. It's a classic. Question. I also think it's topical. We have discussed if James Earl Jones dislikes his own voice. At time of recording, he just passed away. Rest in peace, Space Dad. Absentee Space Dad.
Grandpa.
Although I did learn, you know, in all the obituaries that came out, that he did not like his voice. Not necessarily the sound of it, but he grew up with a stutter, and so he was kind of mad at his own voice for betraying them. So I feel like we did get some sort of closure on that question that we had for him.
We did.
Even though we were never able to make contact in time and ask him directly. Also, Star Wars Outlaws just came out if you're a gamer. A friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, Chastity from D News, actually worked for Ubisoft in their PR department working on the games. She's in the credits, so
excited.
It's kind of cool.
She's been pumped about it.
And then also just everybody likes Star Wars, right?
I mean,
like, it's the
everybody
law.
Might be the wrong. I mean, is it the law?
Well, Nick is a big fan of Star Wars. In fact, he says in his additional context that he sent in with his question, I'm a big Star Wars fan.
That is the first line.
It's the first line. Everyone always wants to know how to make a lightsaber work, but what about the blasters in that galaxy? How could those work, and what would it take? Okay, so before we get into this, I understand that people are very passionate about Star Wars. Very, very ferociously,
I don't know why you feel that way,
tenaciously
Julian.
passionate. I'm going to out myself a little bit here and say that I am not. I enjoy it as a side diversion from time to time. I do not delve into the lore of the world very much and the technologies therein. I did have the 1997 seminal work by Bill Smith, The Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology in the Star Wars universe, which you've probably seen it. It's illustrated, it's gorgeous, and it tries to like assign realistic engineering to all the fanciful gadgets and doohickeys. But aside from looking at the pictures, I really never got that into it compared to a lot of other people. So, all that being said, I am aware that I am not going to be perfectly lore accurate, but here's the thing, is the lore itself is contradictory and confusing sometimes.
True.
Because, and this is important, it's all made up.
It's all made up. That galaxy far, far away.
Somebody made it up at some point for the purposes of story and fun, and then people take it way too seriously and get upset over what is quote-unquote correct or canon or what have you. And I'm just going to preempt all this conversation by saying, let's just chill. Let's just chill out for a little bit because it is made up and therefore inherently there's no like most right answer. I think this is really funny because I have a acquaintance who makes like miniatures for movies and TV shows. There's some like spy thriller show where at one point they blow up like a missile, like a SAM site radar dish. And his company built the tiny little version of the radar dish that they actually explode, you know, so it looks like a life-size building, but
that's neat.
Obviously without all the cost. And I asked him, like, when you're making stuff for these sci-fi movies, you know, and you just glue bits and bobs onto the side of something to make it more visually interesting, like, do you ever think about how that's going to affect the lore later? And he goes, oh yeah, all the time. You know?
He does? Because,
I mean,
firstly, fun fact, the vocab word for those little bits and bobs, greeblies.
Greebling. Great,
Love it.
Great vocab word, right? Which
Really
is
good
when
vocab word.
you add just some details for the sake of visual interest, right?
It makes things look bigger.
Yeah, but this artist that I know who makes these miniatures, he's not making all the bits and bobs for the purpose of like, how's the engineering of this thing going to work, right? Especially when it's sci-fi and it's all kind of made up and unknowable technology anyway. It's just like, what looks good, what looks believable, like you said, adds to the scale of it because it looks like a more detailed surface instead of just something plain and flat and boring.
Right.
And then I think it's really funny that people who get invested in these universes look at these details and kind of try and reverse engineer like what's going on, like how this technology must actually work based on something that an artist was like, I don't know, stick a pipe on there.
Yeah. And I think famously they took old models and they took other, like all the little pieces out of the old models for Star Wars specifically, and they stuck them on, you know, painted them so they would match and then stuck them on. So it's, oh, this pole would have been the part of a ladder for F-14 or something. And this wheel, we painted it and popped the middle out and that wheel became like a porthole. You know, they used parts that already existed because it was cheaper. You could just go buy those little plastic bits. And now someone has to retcon.
Yeah, someone like Bill Smith in his the official guide to weapons, you know, has to actually make it all work. That, by the way, another fun vocab. Model makers would call that kit bashing.
Nice.
Yay, nerds. I think it's funny because the weapons in particular in Star Wars are authentic firearms from like World War I, World War II, that they borrowed from an armory and they stuck a bunch of bits and bobs on the side of it to make it look sci-fi-y enough, and now we all have to live with it. You know, Han Solo's iconic blaster with the big silly scope on top of it is like a World War I German Mauser. The Stormtrooper blasters, those are British World War II era Sterling machine guns.
No wonder they couldn't hit anything. That's
I know. I think it's really funny, by the way, a tangent on a tangent on a tangent, that the Star Wars universe, which is so fascism-coded messaging, you know, and like the Stormtroopers are very obviously supposed to be like the Nazis, are using British weapons, and Han Solo, one of the good guys, is using a German handgun, but that's a very minor. But anyway, that is all to say. Please be nice to me as I struggle through this unfamiliar galaxy that I'm sure many of you know incredibly well. Okay.
This is the longest disclaimer. You can tell that this audience, I just want you can tell that this man has worked on YouTube and he has seen the comments.
Yes.
He just
I
spent
know
that entire time being like, I hear you,
care.
I see you, I get it, I understand.
Care,
it's
and
like,
I'm as always doing my best.
Yes.
Okay. So with all that said, how did somebody like Bill Smith actually take the source material of the Sterling machine gun with a bunch of stuff glued onto it and kind of reverse engineer a weapon? In the Star Wars universe, what is the lore accurate way that plasma, excuse me, what is the lore accurate way that blasters work?
Yeah.
So Trace, when you see all the pew-pews going across the screen on Star Wars, what's your gut instinct on what they're shooting, how it works? What do you think it is?
I mean, my gut instinct is some kind of plasma, or probably because it seems to be powered forever, maybe just lasers, honestly.
Yes.
And we're just seeing an artful display of that, because I have trouble not thinking of it as a movie. But I don't know. I honestly don't know. So a little admitting from me, I'm a Trekkie. I mean, I'm happy about it, but I don't feel like the people who wanted to get this question answered are happy about it. But my brother loved Star Wars, so I watched it all the time with him. He would watch it on beta. My dad had recorded it onto beta, and he would just watch it. My brother, over and over, he'd finish it and rewatch A New Hope over and over again, and then finish and rewatch Empire over and over, and so on. He just loved them. And so I thought about it because I've seen it so many times. Plasma, lasers, heat, something in that spectrum, pun intended.
So I think a lot of people who do not pay particular close attention would go, it's a laser gun, right? It's laser. And misleadingly, some of the weapons in the Star Wars universe are called laser this or that. There's turbo lasers and laser cannons, right? The laser cannons are like on the X-wing, on the wingtips, and the turbo lasers are like the big artillery-looking things on the Death Star trench that are shooting at Luke as he goes by. And so years ago, I actually did make a video about how those might work, and I called them lasers, and I got a comment section full. Because as it turns out, they are plasma weapons that use lasers in a convoluted way.
Okay, convoluted laser usage.
So a clue that they're not lasers is when you actually watch the movies, you don't see like an instantaneous beam flash, right? It's a projectile that's definitely not going the speed of light. Light's really, really fast. And as we watch Star Wars, you can just see, by comparison, this beam of energy crawling across the screen, right? Enough that somebody can react and bat it away with a lightsaber. So I think in order to kind of be somewhat scientifically accurate, the Star Wars universe has said, no, these aren't actually laser weapons. They're plasma weapons, but they use lasers to create the plasma. So, again, according to Bill Smith and this 1997 seminal work, The Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology, you start with a gas. In the Star Wars universe, typically, most commonly, it's a gas called Tabana, and it's mined from the planet Bespin, Cloud City, where Lando Calrissian. Yeah, the whole purpose of that is mining Tabana gas. And Tabana has uses in blasters as well as for hyperdrives in the Star Wars universe. So apparently that's why it's a wealthy mining operation, although I have my doubts on that we'll come back to. But you take this gas and you have like a very small amount of it in a cylinder somewhere on the weapon, and then you excite it with a laser and it turns into a plasma. You then focus it. So the actual parts of the weapon that it goes through, it starts in the little gas chamber container portion. The trigger's pulled, a tiny amount goes to the gas conversion enabler exciter. It gets excited with some energy. Maybe it's a laser, maybe it's something else like an electromagnetic field, who knows? It gets turned into a plasma. It goes into an actuating blaster module. All great sci-fi words, by the way. Just
really good names. I feel like one of those at least has to be like the Thompson accelerator, because like definitely some person's gonna name something after themselves.
You can't have a blaster part that's just called Jim's Doodad.
Well, in the teleporter in Star Trek, there's the Heisenberg compensator because it compensates for the
Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So it's like, at least it's got a name of a real person, and it's not just the uncertainty principle actuation machine. Most inventions have bits with names. Anyway, sorry.
Knowing inventors, though, I would not put it past them to come up with some ridiculous name or really dumb acronym. We'll come back to that.
Ooh.
Foreshadowing. Okay. So in the actuating blaster module, it's turned into a beam of, quote, intense energy particles coupled with light. Whatever that means. Then it goes through a prismatic crystal that focuses the beam and then shoots out of the barrel, and it kills Greedo. So it shoots out of the barrel, barely missing Han, and then Han does the same thing and shoots Greedo. So it shoots out of the barrel simultaneously, almost, that Greedo and Han shoots, so it's ambiguous of whether or not Han is a cutthroat rapscallion or a good person.
Totally undermining his character development from
Wouldn't it be really funny if we released multiple versions of this episode and just cut one of those in to each, like a week apart, but never told anyone? It wouldn't matter, but it'd be really funny to me. Anyway. Yes, that's the complete process, apparently, of how this whole thing works. Now, I see some problems with it right off the bat. Do you?
I mean, the plasma going through a solid crystal is interesting.
Yeah.
That's not awesome. And would also... let's assume it can somehow traverse this solid piece of crystal. It would also lose a ton of energy in that transfer, and that crystal would get really hot. So maybe it's made of something very exotic. I don't know. There's so many other, and what is propelling it in the direction it's going, and like, why is it?
I love your beautiful brain so much. I really, genuinely, really like your brain. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's all the same issues that I identify. The easy one is like, a plasma is actual material, physical matter.
State of matter. It's not like a magic.
Yes. So to catch anybody up who might not be aware, right, it's like the fourth standard state of matter. We don't see it too much on Earth, but there are circumstances where we see it. But it is actually 97 to 99% of the visible matter in the universe is in the form of plasma, which makes sense because that's what stars are made of, and stars are big, and there's a lot of them. Plasma is this fourth state of matter. If we start with solid, where atoms are neatly arranged into nice, orderly, non-moving arrangements, then we melt that, we put in some energy, we turn these atoms into a liquid where they're flowing past each other, add some more energy, they turn into a gas, and now they're kind of free-floating around, colliding with each other. Add even more energy to that, and eventually the electrons that are orbiting around the atom nucleuses get stripped off, and you get these negatively charged electrons and these positively charged ions, and that is what plasma is.
Yeah, super high energy matter.
Exactly. And they can't go through a crystal. Light can, right?
Yes.
Photons of light can go through transparent material because they don't interact with it.
Right.
But not the same for plasma.
Well, because there's this one little thing, what is it? This one thing physicists hate, that plasma is matter and photons are not matter.
Yeah, photons are energy.
They are energy.
Yeah. So that's an issue with the design there. And then, like you mentioned, what's accelerating that plasma? What's actually giving it the forward motion out of the blaster? It's not really clear.
I can tell you what Bill Smith thinks, or is just assuming that people would come with it. The coupling of the laser. Because when you shoot a laser in a direction, obviously lasers by their inherent nature is lined up light all going in the same direction. So I think the idea is it's the Disney monorail of the plasma. It's just shooting off, out the end. So it's like it couples it and then they take it out like a train car. But yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting you say that, because digging into the lore and people discussing what these weapons might actually be and how they would work, I found some really interesting explanations that were like that you basically have like a laser beam that does the actual damage and then some charged particles that go along with it. Now, the issue with coupling them together is they do not travel at the same speed. Because plasma is matter, you have to accelerate it, you have to put energy into it, and it can't ever travel at the speed of light, whereas light travels at the speed of light. Yeah. So over a very, very short distance, the beam and the actual bundle of particles are going to be uncoupled, so that bundle of particles is going to trail behind the beam. Now, what's funny is in Star Wars movies, there are instances where the VFX artist, because I imagine they basically had a green or red highlighter and they just went over the film and just in like the 70s, like that was the extent of high-tech visual effects back then. And there are instances where something blows up or somebody dies and keels over, and then like a frame later, you get a bolt of red light or green light. Right. And so again, like talking about the greebling and being reverse engineered to fit with some lore and narrative, people have taken these instances of just like somebody making film and like an extra died a little earlier than we drew the green line, and now it's canon.
Yeah. Now somehow the laser killed him or her, and the plasma hadn't arrived yet, and that's okay. The plasma does the burning damage, the laser does the killing damage. Everybody knows this, Julian.
Right, except, again, when we see, like, Mace Windu or Count Dooku or whatever, like, batting away these shots from a blaster, right? They're hidden
the plasma
glowing particle part. So, again, it's all made up. It's okay. It's all made up. It's not consistent.
Art. It's just art.
Enjoy the movie.
It's all just art.
Just enjoy the big silly space opera, okay? Yeah. But yeah, that has some merit to it because lasers, we only see them, since they're a focused beam of light, we only see them when they scatter off of stuff like dust particles or smoke. So if they're traveling through space or, if they're basically not pointed right in your eyeball, you shouldn't see that beam of a laser. Whereas plasma can have light that it emits.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about this is there's high energy plasma and there's low energy. High energy plasma, you pumped enough energy into it that you've completely ionized all the gas. You've ripped all the electrons off of all the nuclei, and that should be invisible. The way that things emit light, right, when they absorb some energy, typically is the electrons that are orbiting around the nucleus. They get excited. The electrons absorb that energy. They jump to a higher energy state, and then they fall back down. And when they fall down again to their lower energy state, they give off that energy as light, and they radiate it in a random direction, right? So if all the atoms are completely turned into plasma, totally dissociated, all the protons and electrons, then the electrons aren't orbiting anything, and therefore they won't fall to a lower energy state orbiting this atom and give off light. So high energy plasma should be invisible. Therefore, in the Star Wars universe, if that is plasma coming out of the blaster, that's low energy plasma. You've got some electrons and protons or ions basically recombining, and the energy of the electron is being given off as light that we see. This is actually more common on Earth than you might think. A candle flame, for example, is hot enough that some of the gas is plasma.
Cool.
And then when the electrons and protons find each other again and recombine, it gives off light. And that's the light you see from a candle. Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
Or you could also say that it's not all flame is plasma. I should also say that, given enough energy, black bodies will give off light in the visible light range as well as the infrared. So it's not all down to plasma, but some of the glow of a flame is from plasma. Neat.
Cool.
Lightning is also another example of plasma that we can see. The aurora borealis and australis, that is electrons and protons recombining as they travel down the Earth's magnetic field, heading towards the poles of our planet.
The pole lines, yeah.
Yeah. So that's all real-world plasma that we can see. So in the Star Wars universe, again, these blasters must be using low energy plasma. You can create that with a laser, and you can focus that laser through some sort of lens, or I don't know, prismatic crystal if we want to be all sci-fi about it.
Yes.
And concentrate that energy on some gas and excite that gas to turn into a plasma. So if we move the lens from basically the end stage to earlier in it, like the laser shooting at our little Tabana gas, that's more plausible. That's more realistic. Yeah. Let's talk about Tabana gas, though.
Hang on. Does the gas expand
when it gets hot?
Heated? Because it would.
It would make sense.
It would, which would mean then the blaster just has to have a tube, just like any projectile weapon.
Well, we can contain it once it's plasma, and we'll get to that in a moment.
Oh, okay.
So the thing about Star Wars is it does take place in our universe, right? It's in a galaxy far away.
Yeah.
But that still means it's in our universe.
Physics.
Our laws of physics, our periodic table, right?
Right.
So unless Tabana gas is like some mixture of elements that we already know of on the periodic table or some molecule, it's just made out of stuff that you already have encountered or know about just from chemistry class.
Right.
In all likelihood, though, because Bespin's a gas giant, it should just be hydrogen, right?
No.
Hydrogen's
gas.
Hydrogen's the most abundant element in the universe.
Tabana
the gas giants in our solar system.
Abundant element in the universe, and the gas giants in Bespin's solar system.
Yeah. Well, I don't see why Bespin would be, I don't know, a bunch of like really weird rare gas. It's probably...
Maybe it is.
Just hydrogen. Maybe it is, but hydrogen works well if you want to generate plasma anyway. It's the easiest element to convert into plasma. But back to Lando Calrissian's apparently very lucrative Tabana mining operation. I don't think it makes economic sense. I'm just going to go off on this tangent. Look, the whole lore about blasters and the idea of using this gas is you only have to use a tiny little bit of it. You almost never have to reload it ever. Oh my gosh, right? And even with the catastrophic aim of the stormtroopers, wasting all those shots and the use of hyperdrives to power ships and everything like that, I still think you wouldn't have a decent profit margin. I mean, it's a whole gas giant and you've only got like one cloud city as your mining operation. Why couldn't there be a whole bunch of them owned by different people?
Just cover the whole planet.
Yeah, the whole, and any gas giant, really. And it also feels like it's not used that much. Like, the supply is immense. The demand is, I mean, it's decent because it's used so much, but it, like, in so many applications, but it's not consumed that quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I do. The economics of the Star Wars universe is mind-boggling to say the least.
Totally tangential. I wouldn't get into it, but George Lucas decided that a very important plot point of the prequels would be like trade federation agreements.
Yeah.
So like I just felt like I had to throw that in there. I'm turning all red. I can see myself.
I can tell.
Okay. So this Tabana gas, let's be real, it's probably just
hydrogen. They just named it something a little more joie de vivre, you know, like Tabana gas, but it's really just.
Why wouldn't it be just like a different language, right? C-3PO knows how many tens of thousands of languages, right? Hydrogen, we've talked about this, is just from like the Greek word for water creating, right?
Yeah.
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen. Yeah.
So. They obviously don't have Greek in the Star Wars universe, so maybe Tabana is their version of makes water. I don't know. I don't see why not.
I don't see why not either.
So we take our Tabana, hydrogen, whatever. We hit it with our laser through our moved prismatic crystal to a place where it makes sense in the whole machine.
Right.
And we generate some plasma. Now, like you mentioned, how do we contain this, right? We've taken some gas that probably just room temperature, and we've turned it into a very hot thing.
Yeah.
Well, there are benefits to plasma because it has some unique properties based on the fact that it's dissociated into the ions and the electrons. So plasmas have what's called quasi-neutrality, which means that taken as a whole, it has no charge, right? It balances out. You've still got the same number of protons and electrons. Their charges are opposite. It should have a neutral charge. But on a more local level, the charged particles do respond to electric fields, magnetic fields, like any charged particles do, right? So you can use this to your advantage to contain and shape and move these charged particles around, this blob of plasma that you've now created. This is something that we are trying to do on Earth. Obviously, fusion energy is kind of a big goal for scientists, right? If we could recreate how the sun works.
Fingers crossed.
Take some plasma and actually get it to start, hitting other protons to start creating energy. That would be a massive clean source of energy. And as it turns out, it's really complicated to try and actually do that.
Yeah.
So one of the most promising avenues that scientists have been exploring is trying to create fusion in a reactor known as a tokamak, right? And it's an acronym that it comes from Russian, and it stands for like toroidal magnetic plasma, blah, 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 blah. But basically, it's a donut-shaped thing.
It's a donut.
Right?
It's a fancy donut.
It's a fancy schmancy donut. They create some plasma. They contain it in this donut shape because that allows the researchers to have a magnetic field that is the proper shape for stable plasma containment. Except plasma is a real bugger to work with. I found a quote that I absolutely love. Jason Gibson, who has a whole YouTube channel teaching math and science, and he worked researching plasma, and he described it like this. He says, controlling plasma is like controlling Jell-O with a piece of string.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the issue is magnetic fields in particular, they don't really act how you would expect them to when they're interacting with charged particles. As a charged particle is moving along through a magnetic field, the forces on that charged particle are actually perpendicular to the direction of travel, not in line with it. So you can accelerate something with like an electric field in one way, and then the magnetic field is going to push it another.
Yeah.
And so you have these issues with plasma fusion attempts at creating reactors where the charged particles also, because they have opposite charges, they move in opposite directions. That's super helpful, right? The protons go one way, and then the electrons feel
the other way,
force pushing them in the other way. They move in little spirals following the magnetic field lines, and because sometimes they're being accelerated in the direction they're traveling, but then when they're spiraling back, heading the other way, they're kind of resisting that direction of travel now. They spiral outwards, and they drift. So again, the magnetic fields that have to be created to contain this plasma are very complex, very powerful, and even then, a big problem with tokamaks is instability. It does not take very much at all to take this ring of plasma that they've carefully constructed, and just a little bit of turbulence arises because it's a big chaotic mess. All these charged particles are influencing each other as they move around too. Don't forget that all of a sudden, your donut goes all squiggly and hits the walls of the reactor, and you have to shut everything down. So our blaster could theoretically use a magnetic field to contain this plasma and accelerate it.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly complex. It would require a lot of energy. It would probably be pretty dang big. And your plasma bolt, who knows if it's even going to go the direction you want to accelerate it because it's so unwieldy, which might explain why the stormtroopers have such bad aim.
Oh, wow. And why they say blasters are clumsy.
Yes,
it's just like,
exactly.
Well, it doesn't do what you want anyway. You shoot it and it kind of goes, woo!
That's why Greedo couldn't hit Han from point friggin' blank, apparently.
You'd think that they would have invented a better weapon.
Yes. In fact, I feel like part of the blaster is already a better weapon. And that would be just the laser part.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you think about it, right, you have to use all this energy to make a laser that excites this gas. So you put all that energy into your Tabana gas, and then you have to use even more energy to contain it and accelerate it. And it's like, why don't you just use the laser bit and only the laser bit?
Burn
your projectile travels at the speed of light. So aiming's a lot simpler. You don't have to account for leading your target to where they're going to be. You don't have to worry about maybe, say, a magnetic field, because a force field would deflect that charged particle of gas, right? If you have a magnetic field around your ship and you shoot charged particles at it, much like the Earth.
You have a shield.
Yeah, and our magnetic field, it's going to deflect it away. So a laser won't have to worry about that interaction. The downsides of lasers, and this is something that particularly the U.S. military is interested in, because there's a lot of upsides to a laser, right? All the things I mentioned, the near instantaneous travel, the fact you don't have to account for projectile drop. It's also, in theory, very cheap to fire off a laser shot. You know, the future of warfare is moving towards like a lot of drones right now. And part of the economic problem with intercepting those drones to keep, you know, whatever it is that you're trying to keep safe is the missiles that you're shooting at these cheap drones might be a lot more expensive, like orders of magnitude more expensive than the drones. So it's really easy for somebody with a lot of cheap drones to possibly like punch through these defenses.
Right.
If you've got lasers that can just pew, 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 like knock all these little drones out at a few pennies per shot, you know, in terms of the energy expenditure, that makes sense to use it. So yeah, the military's interested in this. You need to focus the laser on the target for a good amount of time, though. You have to transfer enough that heat energy to disable whatever it is in some way. Maybe, you know, there's some important electronics on board that you're overheating, or some sensors that you're destroying, like an optical sensor, something like that. So there's downsides. There's also the issue of, you know, traveling through the atmosphere as it goes through gases or humidity, might attenuate the energy. It's not, you know, ideal.
There's the issue of having a Jedi in the way, and you just push that thing out of the, you know, whatever. They hit it with their little laser sword thing, and then sometimes they use magic, and they'll just stop it in midair, and it'll just stay there.
Yep, it's magic. Just at a certain point, it just becomes magic, because it's all made up. Again, it's an important thing to remember. Yeah, so laser weapons are something the U.S. military is very interested in. They've sunk a lot of money into it. They're probably going to keep doing it until the technology actually catches up with the theory. But the Star Wars universe doesn't apparently use that based on what we can actually see in the movies.
Right. We're also assuming that they use power sources that we understand, right? Like they can do hyperspace and move giant things and blow up planets. And so maybe they found some small power source and they're just like, I don't care how much energy it takes to turn Taiwan gas into a thing and push it through a tube and whatever. I'll have basically functionally unlimited power, so who cares?
You would need some mystical source of energy, like the most energy dense battery you could possibly ever imagine, right? Like you go 1,000 miles in your car on like the size of a 9-volt battery sort of thing. Like it's just insane. Nothing that we know of would be capable of doing something like that. I mean, we've talked about like nuclear pellets and whatnot and how much energy they contain. But it's
even
like,
that isn't this. Right?
Yeah, are you using that like per shot? I don't know. Okay, now, the U.S. military, specifically the Air Force, though, at one point, did publish research on a plasma cannon.
Cool.
And remember I talked about crazy acronyms?
Oh, no.
Well, this plasma cannon project was known as the Magnetically Accelerated Ring to Achieve Ultra-High Directed Energy and Radiation, or Marauder.
Wow, that reeks of a backronym, definitely. Somebody came up with the word Marauder, and then they're like, how can we fit an acronym into that?
How do we make it like something that strikes fear into the hearts of our enemies, you know? Like, you can't have an acronym that's like daisies.
Yeah.
And it's like deadly aimed interstellar, I don't know.
I was going to figure this out.
Deadly aimed intergalactic solar Yoda. Anyway.
Okay, I got it. Daisy.
Okay.
It's a directed, actuated, high-intensity shooting. Yeah, boy!
Oh, that'll make the other side flee in terror.
True.
Anyway, so Marauder. Now, apparently, the goal of Marauder was to accelerate a toroid, so a donut of plasma with a mass of 0.5 to 2 milligrams, so very small, but accelerated to 3% the speed of light, so the energy it's traveling with is megajoules, millions of joules of energy. For comparison, a rifle bullet with a massive, I know there's a lot, again, people get very sensitive about these statistics, although these things are real, so I understand that a bit more. But let's just say you have a rifle bullet, it's got a mass of 3.5 grams, and leaving this particular rifle, the muzzle velocity is about 1,000 meters per second. The kinetic energy of that is around 23 kilojoules. So, megajoules, millions of joules to 23,000 joules from a rifle bullet. That's what Marauder was attempting to accomplish. But it needed an insane amount of energy. Like, the pictures of it are just, the capacitor banks are like this giant starfish-looking thing that has to store up all this energy and then release it all in one go to create the plasma and, direct it how you want. So the project went classified shortly after that, so who knows if it's still out there.
It's real.
But probably not. It's just so impractical, right? So our Star Wars blaster, with realistic Earth technology that we know of, is insane. Like, you'd need... massive energy. Forget like a backpack, like some earlier, blaster technology in the Star Wars canon. You'd need like a trailer truck of capacitors.
You'd need a giant tank.
Yeah.
That isn't very well armored because that would be too much energy to pull it around.
And you'd need to charge it up with however you're going to do that. Hamster on a wheel, monkey with a crank. I don't know.
The audience couldn't see it, but when Julian said charge it up, he was cranking in the air. Like it's
I'm
an
just
old
imagining
Model T.
You fire your blaster.
Can we fire the plasma?
It's got to make the monkey, pop goes the weasel organ grinder noise. Like,
There's a bunch of Aaron Aronsons out there.
Get back to cranking!
Are we ready yet?
For the glory of the Empire, right? And like, you crank, right? You charge this whole thing up, and then poof, you release it again in one go, and then crank. And again, a lot of that energy is being wasted, creating the magnetic fields and the plasma, and it could just be a laser.
Fire the laser.
Fire the lasers!
Yeah, fire the lasers. That's what we've learned.
Anyway, so that's a more Earth-centric, realistic kind of take on what a Star Wars blaster would have to be. For it to be, movie accurate.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Cool.
So I hope, Nick, that answers your question. And Alfonso, I hope you're happy with your super delegate vote. But yeah, it's fun to dive into that. I watched a lot of stuff and read a lot of stuff on plasma physics, and that was a bummer.
Oh.
It's so complicated.
I love it when you don't ever want to do math on the podcast, but the questions always make you do math on the podcast.
Yeah.
It just makes me happy every time.
I have to do math and then come back and be like, trust me, bro, this is what the math said. But more than that,
boy!
It's the complex physics of how charged particles and specifically magnetic fields interact that made it
it's tough.
More challenging. But suffice it to say, like, your blaster also probably wouldn't look anything like a sleek machine gun, converted prop, right? Because it'd have to have these big electromagnets on it, and it would probably have to shape the plasma in a very specific way, like a toroid. It might be like a big, weird donut-looking thing, or like a huge... I don't know.
Yeah, like a cool Hellboy gun.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet.
Oh, somebody's going to ask us about how's Hellboy a thing next.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We're here for it. Submit those questions.
Yeah, ask those questions. Get them polled. If you haven't joined the Patreon and voted, you're missing out. Do it during the break.
Speaking of, let's take said break, and when we come back, we'll have Trace's question.
Woohoo!
Whee!
Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
We think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And this is super cool. Many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like, I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out. Welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. We hope you had a blaster with our first answer. And now, Trace, what is your question this week?
My question comes from friend of the absurd, Meredith, as in Meredith from the podcast Meredith for Real, who was one of our first friends in the world of podcasting. And she asks, where does creativity come from? She sent in a clip.
Hey, Trace and Julian, this is Meredith. So here's my question. Where does creativity come from? Is it from our brains, in our hearts? Is it genetic? What quantifies something to be creative? And then what quantifies it to be not creative? Like, could math be creative? Is the idea that something like math could be creative? What's the difference between creativity that solves a problem and creativity that produces something, simply for pleasure? I can't wait to hear what you guys cook up.
There's a lot there, a lot to go through. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready. So, creativity is tough to nail down because it is such an interesting concept. Julian, what do you think creativity is?
I mean, if I'm going to be very uncreative in my answer, it's creating something. Right? Like displaying an aptitude for making new things.
Ooh, what is a new thing?
Oh, any sort of object, right? I still think, you know what? Maybe it's more like a new concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I make pancakes every single morning for breakfast, you wouldn't call me creative. I'm creating a thing, but I'm not very original. But if I come up with new flavors to add into the pancakes, right? Maybe I'll try banana, but then maybe I'll try like...
a little lemon juice in there.
Banana jalapeno pepper pancake? I don't know. Let's try it, right? Maybe it's not good, but it's certainly creative.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking more philosophically. And so, I thought of creativity as, the ability to listen to the stream of consciousness that you have and then kind of direct it a little bit. Use what you want, ignore what you don't want, but you're dipping your cup into the stream of consciousness and use it.
You're lassoing the jello that is your thoughts with a string.
Yeah. Exactly. So as you know, and many of the early listeners know, I play the fife, and I did it at Mackinac State Historic Parks.
We all know you play the fife, Trace.
I don't even know where it is. So I can't play it for you now.
Thank goodness you've lost it in the move.
But I only played in the summertime. It was my job during the summer. And so I would play from May to October.
You fair weather fifer.
Definitely. And then November till April, I wouldn't be playing the fife. So I would show up on Mackinac Island and I would grab the fife out of our, back room and I would go out and play the fife. And it would be the first time I played in 6 months. And Julian, I know that you have some musical talent. Have you ever done anything like that where you just take time off and then pick something up?
Yeah, so I am a man in my 30s, which means I own a guitar that I rarely play. But every now and then I'll see it, I'll remember it exists, and I'll go and I'll be like, I wonder if I can play this song still. And I feel like I'm using another person's hand. Like my hand was cut off and then a new one was attached by a robot.
Right.
And I'm trying to teach it how to do things again. And it takes some time, but I get there eventually.
Yeah. For me, I would pick up the fife and I always would stand. So Mackinac is a big limestone rock, basically, and there's a shelf of a cliff that the fort is built on. So we would stand and play the fife so that people down in the park below the fort could hear it to try and entice them to come up to the fort. And so I'd be playing the fife.
You're literally like a Pied Piper.
Literally a Pied Piper. And I would be playing the fife, and I played the 24 songs that I knew so many times that first day I would be very rusty, but eventually I would start to get back into it. And within the first couple of days, I swear to you, I would be playing a song and I had no idea what song it was, what was going to happen next in the song. I was consciously thinking, what is this? And my fingers are just playing the song. And I remember having those two different streams of consciousness. And I think the creativity part for me is that feeling, right? I don't know where this is going. I don't know what is happening, but let's see where it goes. Let's harness it a little bit.
You're just along for the ride. The fife's
right.
in control now. Hand over all your will to the fife. Surrender to the music. Feel the rhythm flowing through your body and out the silly tube instrument you're playing.
Let's do the conga. Like
Come on,
Gloria
everybody.
Estefan would say.
Yes, because the rhythm, it's gonna get you.
It's gonna
it's
get
coming
ya.
for you. The rhythm
Tonight.
is behind you right now.
Luckily, we're friends. So maybe it's my ADHD, but, my brain is constantly playing songs and talking and going all these different directions. And sometimes I can't control that. I can't always stop the song that's playing, But when I'm writing, that's different. When I'm writing, I'm so focused and I'm just doing that. Things come into my head. I don't even know where they come from. And so that's creativity to me as a writer. And then creativity to me as a musician, and creativity to me as an artist, when I'm blacksmithing, or if you're a painter or something, I'm sure it feels different. The reason I bring all this up is, how do you study that? How do you science that?
It does
tough.
seem unquantifiable.
Right. So the dictionary definition of creativity, it's a noun. It's the use of the imagination or original ideas, especially in the production of an artistic work.
Right. So at the heart of where does creativity come from is where does imagination come from?
Yeah. Figment, obviously, the purple dinosaur from the Imagination Station. But anyway, I think that's too narrow a definition. I don't like that definition because it implies creativity only applies to art.
Right.
Where we all know you can be creative in athletics, you can be creative in engineering, you can be creative in business, you can be creative in architecture. And yes, there is art involved in all of those things, but it's not an artistic work, right? A great spreadsheet could be both creative and also not necessarily art, and that's okay. There's a book called The Source, The Secrets of the Universe, The Science of the Brain, which for some reason in my notes I wrote Brian.
The science of the Brian.
The science of the
We
Brian.
dissected one guy named Brian.
So this book is by Tara Swart, and she writes, quote, "A creative brain is one that can put ideas to use in unexpected ways, using contrasting combinations of thoughts to foster new ones. This is the new, and at the same time ancient, superpower of the human mind, to reinvent, imagine, improve, and rethink. When we're thinking with our whole brain and devote our whole creative power to a situation or problem, we see possibility where others see limitations." And then she goes on, it's a long quote, I know, but to be creative, we also need to develop a level of confidence in our right to express that unique take on things, to value our ideas and interpretations. So when I was philosophizing and coming up with the stream that I can sort of direct, Tara's sort of saying the same thing, right? It's not only do you have to recognize that it's there, you have to recognize how to move it and how to shape it and how to use it. And I think that's hard for some people to imagine even. Do you see yourself as creative? I hope so, because of what we do for a living, but...
What's funny? I really don't.
See, somehow I knew you would say that. I somehow felt that you would be no, I'm not creative. You literally write for a living. You play music. You do so many, you build things. You oh my God.
Right, but usually I follow the instructions of the Lego set. I don't go off the plan. I don't deviate. But no, I do think about this and I don't consider myself creative, but I wonder how many people, I think humans fundamentally are creative, as a species. When Tara Swart says that this is the superpower of the human mind, I believe that because it's such a big part of what made our species what we are, right?
Yeah.
Taking things and imagining new innovative ways to use them or apply them. And that is something that is so fundamentally human. But at the same time, when I compare myself to others, I'm just I don't feel like I make new stuff. I imagine new stuff. I am wholly original. And I wonder if that's just a self-doubt thing or...
I think we've been trained to think that we're not creative. I think I asked this question thinking that you would probably say that, because I think most people, even the people in our audience who aren't in the fine arts traditionally, and especially in the US. I can't speak to other places and other kind of cultural kind of centers, but for us, I think we're taught creative people are X and non-creative people are Y, and it is a immutable trait. You are born a creative person or you are born a non-creative person. And I don't know if you felt this, but it's BS. So
there is a quote I think about from time to time. It's supposedly attributed to Steve Jobs, but Steve Jobs is one of those people that, like, there's a lot of apocryphal quotes assigned to him, and like Abraham Lincoln, you know, but I do think that there's some truth to it, regardless of who said it first. And it's something along the lines of creative people just see connections that others don't. Yeah. And so to them, it's not something that's mind-blowing or new. They just saw a connection, they put some things together, and they came up with something that to them was obvious, and so they don't feel creative. And I think there is some truth to that.
I totally agree. You've heard of right brain, left brain, right?
Yes, and I hate it.
Yes, I also hate it. And it comes from this 1960s study by a psychobiologist, Roger W. Sperry, and psychologist Michael Gazzaniga. And the two of them, Sperry and Gazzaniga, came up with this idea based on their research. And they said that there's the logical brain, which is one side of the brain, and the artistic brain, which is the other side of the brain.
Sure.
You know, you're right-brained and you're very like, or you're left-brained and you're very, woo. So their studies created this myth that the brain is lateralized, it is split. This is not true.
Yes.
The brain is split physically. There are two hemispheres. The left is not more analytical or linear or more orderly. The right is not imaginative or emotional or intuitive. But Sperry won a Nobel Prize for his research. And it birthed this terrible pop culture, pop psych label that, oh, I'm type A, you know, I'm left-brained, I'm, you know, and that's just not true. The brain is split. There are two hemispheres. There are different regions that control different things, but
There is some localization, right, of functions.
Right.
There's like language processing happens more in one hemisphere, visual processing more so in the other. But yeah, this idea, this is the thing that gets my goat about this, is, you know, when people meet left-handed people, they're like, oh, you are therefore right-brained and therefore more creative. And it's like, no.
There is no evidence of that whatsoever.
Just no. It's another way, like, so much pop psychology that drives me insane of, like, basically quickly putting people into little predefined boxes so we don't have to think complexly about other human beings. It's this drives me nuts about Myers-Briggs type indicators, that sort of thing.
Yes.
And we go through fads. There's going to be a new one in 5 years, no doubt. But, like, I just despise them so much. I really don't like them.
As a behavioral sciences major in college with a bachelor's in science and behaviorism, yes, I totally agree.
Thank you.
Sperry and Gazzaniga came up with this idea based on actual real studies that they did. Yes, there are some examples of some things, but none of them play out in the way that pop psych has said so, right? So in 2013, some researchers, some neuroscientists went to try and find some evidence of this. They basically looked at that original research and they found, using MRI scans and things, that both sides of the brain are always working all the time in creative tasks and logical tasks. They're working together, and there is no evidence that the brain favors the left or the right side of the brain when doing a creative task. No one is one-sided. No one favors one side of the other. Caveat, brain damage. If you don't have part of your brain, yes, then you would favor.
You're going to offload some of that to somewhere else, right?
Yeah. And that brings me back to, okay, so if I was brain damaged on the right side, would I be the best, most logical thinker in the world? No, that's just not.
Yeah. If you have a big math test, do not ram the right side of your head into a wall.
Yeah.
That's not going to help.
I don't know. I don't even know which side is for which thing. But either way, there's no evidence of it. In fact, brain scans during creative tasks found that the whole brain was engaged all the time. And I spent so much time on this because so many people do exactly as you said. Here's what I wrote, Julian, which this is just me loving you right now.
Aww.
So many people use these tools to put people in boxes and believe there is science to justify that box, often incorrectly.
Boo.
This, MBTI, and any number of other pop psych
Phrenology.
quizzes, phrenology, are just ways to do that. And we've known for decades that there are no brain halves. Decades. Like, the first studies on this happened pretty quickly, and there wasn't a lot of evidence for it. There are evidences that, like, the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and the occipital cortex does some specific things, the prefrontal does some specific things, and like all of these different groups, as you mentioned. But during creative tasks, logical tasks, no evidence whatsoever. So in trying to study creativity without a tight, specific definition, here's exactly what we're looking for, it's very difficult to study. So I looked up some literature reviews and meta-analyses of the research, because there are journals that only focus on creativity, whole scientific journals that are trying to nail down what this is. Because imagine the power of that. If we could just give you, I don't know, a test and know, like IQ, whether or not you have a high creative score. There's no such thing as that, because it's so difficult to nail down.
Or a drug that stimulates,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Like the creative center of your brain or something
Yes.
like that, right?
Yeah. A 2017 Lit review of a whole bunch of different studies of creativity found 100 different ways that they were defining it. Another study found over a dozen different ways. And it's just a lot of different ways to think about this single concept. So when Meredith asks where creativity comes from, it gets very complicated, because you don't necessarily know what creativity is. So somebody tried to define it, and they broke it into something that you also see in pop psych, the 4 Ps. Have you heard of this? And you sort of teased it without knowing that you were teasing it in your answer earlier about creativity, where you were saying one of the Ps, the very first one, is product. The thing that you made, the thing that you put out there. So if you wrote a paper, if you made a clay pot, if George R.R. Martin actually finished writing the damn books, those are all the product.
You have something tangible at the end of this process.
Yeah. So that's one way to think about creativity. Another way, process. You're sitting, you're thinking, you're writing, you're doing this thing, you're working through the process of creativity, you know, like George R.R. Martin writing the books.
And writing and writing. That guy's stuck on that P.
And then the third P is person, which is that immutable trait. So personality, intellect, attitude, temperament. They're creative because of this experience.
Yeah.
Yes. And then another one, which was confusing to me, the fourth P is press. I don't know why it's called press, but it's the relationship between the person and their environment.
The relationship between the person and their environment?
Right. So where they're sitting, how they're, like, if they're relaxed, if they're under a tree writing in a journal, like, it's all very...
Yeah, I think they had a real strong start with 3 Ps, and they were like, oh, and then environment. And then they're like, we can't call it PPPE or triple PE or something. Okay.
Right.
Sure.
These were defined, by the way, by Mel Rhodes in the Analysis of Creativity in 1961. And since then, most of these have been rejected as good tests of creativity. According to R. Keith Sawyer in the Journal of Creativity from 2021, he was like, nah, they didn't do that. But then they thought of creativity back then in the 60s as a trait. It was part of the personality. You're born creative, like you're born with green eyes. Just with a very little thought, I was like, how can I debunk these 4 Ps on the podcast? Product. Not all artists make things. Not all people who are creative, who we would all agree are creative, do those, have a product that they can hand you when they're done.
A tangible thing. Yeah.
It's an intangible things. There are some scientists that publish works. There are some authors that don't write things. They just help other people write and help other people being creative. Does that mean they're not creative? No.
I mean, if you just have a really elaborate daydream in your head that you never tell anybody about, I mean, that's still creative, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, person, we've already said it's not a trait. It's something anybody can do. Press, the environment where you're sitting, can help, but it doesn't determine if you are being creative or not. The thing is, the other P, I said most of these have been rejected. Process, that one has not been. Most people agree creativity is a process. It's literally like any other thing we do. It is a process. So when Meredith asks near the end of her question, what's the difference between creativity for pleasure versus creativity for problem solving? And the answer is there isn't a difference. Problem solving is creativity. Just not all creativity is solving a problem.
Yeah. Sometimes
Right?
you just make something because you like pretty art, you know? And
Yeah. And sometimes you drop something into a wall and you have to build a mechanism to get it out of the wall, like I had to do once. I built this fun mechanism with like sticky stuff on it and a pulley, and I wheeled it all the way down with a mirror, and I felt honestly like I was in National Treasure and I was stealing the Declaration
I was going to
of
say that
Independence.
sounded very like a very specific example. I wonder if the mechanisms in our brain for like creativity for artistic expression or creativity for problem solving, I wonder if like the same reward mechanisms are at play.
Great question. Dr. Roger E. Beatty in the journal Cerebrum wrote about the creative brain.
That sounds like your guy. That's the
Neuroscientist, member of the Cognitive Neuroscience of Creativity Lab at Penn State. He's the director of it, and they study how creative thinking works. That's all they do with fMRI machines and stuff. If you don't know what an fMRI machine is, audience, it is a functional magnetic resonance imager. It's a scanner for your brain that tracks your blood flow and how it moves around. The assumption being more blood means more activity. It's using that part of your...
a lot of big donut-shaped magnets in this episode. That's our theme.
really, there are. Yeah. So let's say you have a functional MRI machine, Julian. You've got it in your house.
The local hospital is furious.
They're sending people to you.
They'll never catch me, except they notice all the spoons sticking to my wall.
Yeah, definitely don't put anything metal near it. So somebody's in there, and you want them to be creative. They can't move.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I guess you just have to tell them to imagine something, right? Like we talked about the daydream.
Yeah.
Basically.
Anything directed? Because I can tell you what they did, but I thought I'd see if you had any ideas.
Yeah, I mean, you might give them a prompt of some kind, right? I guess it could be anything. It could be like, tell me a story about a mythical universe of space wizards that use light swords, you know?
Yeah.
Or it could be something else, like giving them a riddle, if we're testing like creativity and problem solving. There's a lot of avenues where you could just have them imagine a solution to something.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right on track. I actually wrote, ask what startup company they might want to make.
Great one.
Or what Star War they would want to see.
Go see a Star War.
Or what sports ball they would play if they could. Or something like that. Or if they won the lotto, what would they do with the money? I was like, just because you're just asking them to imagine stuff. Mm-hmm. Speculate. What if Darth Vader hadn't died at the end of Jedi? Or what if, I don't know, Matt Stafford on the LA Rams gets the yips if they're into sports or whatever. It doesn't matter. In the actual studies, they asked participants to describe uncommon uses for a cardboard box.
Love it.
So good.
Love it.
Very Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah. Transmorgifier.
I love it. Yeah. They also would give them an innocuous word like cup and ask them to recall a past memory about it, imagine a possible future experience with one, or think of a creative way to use it.
A future experience with a cup. Sounds like it'd be so... I mean, I'd be so underwhelming. I'd be like, I'll have a drink out of it later? What do you want from me, science guy? Like,
come on. Jeez, Raj,
imagine,
I don't know.
Wow, picture you in some mythical future where you have a cup. Ooh. What are you going to do with it? What do you think I'm going to do with it?
I'm going to drink out of it.
It's a cup.
I don't understand. Is this a trick question?
Maybe that's the control for like a non-creative task, It's
maybe. I think the funny thing was I was thinking about why they would do this, and it came back to what you said right at the top, which is, I guess more in the middle, which is I don't see myself as a creative person. If you asked most people to tell you a story spontaneously, they probably could do it, but they wouldn't because they'd be embarrassed. They wouldn't want to tell a bad story. They may physically just blank and not think of anything and just not know what to do, kind of freeze. But everyone daydreams. You've heard of the default network, Julian, in the brain?
I don't know. Refresh my memory.
Yeah, it's the default mode network. It's basically when you're daydreaming, relaxing, when you're not thinking about something, they're the regions of the brain that are active.
Right.
So relaxing,
Okay.
meditating. It's the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, the bilateral inferior parietal lobes, and the medial temporal lobes, just for those taking notes at home. And it's referred to in one write-up as like spontaneous thinking. The default mode network is part of the creativity, but not all of it. In order to have creativity, you need more than just kind of the ability to daydream. And for that, I want to back up a little bit to R. Keith Sawyer. So Sawyer wasn't just a researcher of creativity. Sawyer is a jazz and improv theater musician.
Oh,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And scientist.
Gotcha.
So when Sawyer plays the piano for jazz, you're improving, you're following along, but then he literally joined an improv troupe, improvising shows with the actors as the musician playing the music for what they were improvising at the same time.
oh, that's fun. I love that.
Which
I love
sounds
that
amazing.
Stuff. I love that stuff.
Right? Yeah. So he wrote a whole piece just about this, and he wrote a whole book all about it as well, called Zigzag, The Surprising Path to Greater Creativity. And what he thinks is like part of creativity isn't just daydreaming and imagining. It's taking things that exist in your mind and putting them together,
Yeah.
combining things, breaking things, and figuring them out. Yeah.
That makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and so he illustrates that as a zigzag, which fits into the idea of process. Because what he says is the creative process is not linear. There's a lot of iteration with unpredictable shifts in direction. So you go one way, you iterate, you go back the other way. Then you come back, then you go forward again, and you go back. And maybe you're moving in a direction, and maybe you're not. It kind of doesn't matter. The important thing is it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
There's no eureka moment, and then you just go from there, and you've done the creative part. Now you do the work. The work is creative.
Right. And you'll see flaws in your thinking and logic as you go through the process and iterate. But I definitely do think that, like I've had experiences where I'm daydreaming and in the background, my mind is kind of working on a problem that I have, you know, and I'm vaguely aware of like it pinballing around until eventually it does feel like a eureka moment, right? It doesn't come out of nowhere, but it's like there's a sort of like bubbling and bubbling, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh,
yes,
what if? And then you go try it.
Right. So the default mode network also involves the hippocampus, which is the center of our memory. But back to Beatty in the Cerebrum paper, they write that you take these pieces of your memory, you take these pieces and this process, and you put them together with the default network. So you're daydreaming, you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about the past, you're thinking about things that don't exist, and you're like a musician or an improv artist. You're putting those things together in different combinations, and some of those are interesting to you. And the reason that works is because we like to think of our memory as like a video file for the kids, or a videotape or film strip for the olders. And that's not how memory works. Memory is reconstructed every time you access it. It's pieces of who was in the room, what it was like, all the different sensations you were feeling or thinking about, and you put all those together to create this memory. It's not like I go find it in a file cabinet and read about it, or hit a play button in a folder tree. It's a completely new creative thing every time you are recalling stuff. It reconstructs that memory. And so what Beatty says is that's where creativity is. It's the hippocampus working with our daydreams, working with possible things that could happen and things that did happen, and putting them together in what's called cognitive control. So if the default network is the baseline, cognitive control is like, I am thinking actively. And typically the default network isn't active during cognitive control fully. If you're like thinking hard about something, cognitive control. If you're daydreaming, relaxing, default mode network. During creative processes, according to their scans, both are active at the same time. So creativity in the brain is daydreaming plus active thinking smooshed together, which is kind of amazing.
That is awesome.
Right?
I was going to scoff when the first author you quoted talked about like when we use our whole brain, but that does sound like more accurate to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Of like, maybe not the whole brain, but you know, it sounded at first like that myth of like we only use 10% of our brains.
Yeah,
I know. But like, it does sound like there's some science there of like, you're using different regions of your brain that may not normally collaborate, but in this instance, they actually are working together because they're bringing each something to the table that's necessary for the creative process.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about that educational film, Inside Out.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, great film. In
A lot
the
of hockey
dream
in it.
state. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a hockey player from
Yeah,
Minnesota.
I need
Of course
that.
you love
Yeah,
it.
I love that movie.
And who moves to the Bay Area. My
Yeah.
gosh. It's basically a
Practically
reverse you.
me. I am Riley.
So in the movie, there's a dream state. There's a bunch of these little like blobby actors, and they decide, what to do. So imagine if you could put them to work for you, right? Instead of just in dream state, you're like creatively, you're tapping into them. And for those who have seen Inside Out too, yes, I know you can totally comment if you want. I already saw it. It's really, I get it. I totally get it. Those who haven't seen it, hey, no worries. That's fine. Who's your friend to like to play? Bing bong, bing bong. But everybody else, yes.
Oh,
I know.
Oh, my soul.
Bing bong. I know. But anyway, so now that we have this baseline and we kind of understand where creativity is, right? It lives in our brain. It lives in our hippocampus. It's part of the default mode network and the kind of cognitive action or control that we're doing. Meredith wants to know if it's in the heart. I love this about her. The heart is a big muscle, but I think what she means is emotion.
I was going to remark on that as well, because I almost feel like that's a great topic for another episode of like, why do we ascribe certain things to the heart, right? Or,
like
or
when
any
you're
other
heartbroken.
organ,
When-
right?
Yeah, when I was writing this, I was like, oh, I want to talk about that. I just don't have time. But yeah, it's just, the heart is a big muscle. Mm-hmm. We feel things in our heart. I don't know why, but we definitely do. Cambridge University Press published a piece in 2023. It's a meta-analysis of 25 years of study of emotional states and how they influence creativity. And it turns out, of course, being happy is associated with being more creative. However, their studies show that kind of creativity, like, I'm so happy, I'm going to go be creative and make something and do something. That's short-lived creativity. It doesn't sustain itself. Because if you think about it, somebody slights you at work and you're like, oh, I'm going to get it back. And you spend days or weeks thinking about it and being creative about it,
Right.
It's just totally...
Or, ex-boyfriend cheated on you, and so you're going to write a bunch of music about how you hate their guts. I was gonna say, is that why so much art seems to revolve around like pain and tragedy and like...
Yeah, because it's creative stuff. It's creative juice. You gotta prove something, Positive moods, according to this article in Cambridge University Press, is positive moods are good for idea generation, but emotional reactions feed creativity. You're a YouTuber and a commenter makes you mad and you make a whole video about it, or you talk for 3 or 5 minutes at the beginning of a podcast because you want to make sure nobody gets mad at you again.
Just saying. Somebody's still mad at me, I know.
You're a scientist and you find a rare bug, and then you find another rare bug, and then you find a third rare bug, and you put the first rare bug in your mouth. And now you have to write a letter about it. And how do you just approach that?
And then you come up with theory of evolution, just right.
Meredith also wants to know if creativity is genetic. There is some evidence that it might be, but there's not anything solid. I mean, nature versus nurture is tough to answer in the best of times, but more importantly than genetics, there may be something tied to that, right? A very creative person might have a very creative offspring. And somebody who's colorblind might not, have a colorblind offspring, and they might be more creative. You never know. But the thing that most people agree, like an economics professor, Carol Jan Borowicki at the University of Southern Denmark, did 160 years of U.S. Census data, put it into a model, and looked how geography, race, and wealth have influenced generations of creatives. That's kind of close to being genetic. And the old joke that, you have rich parents and they have an artist daughter or son,
right,
holds true.
Yeah, well, they've got time to just create stuff, right?
Right. Money.com's Kristen Baller wrote about it and said, every $10,000 in a total family income increase makes a person 2% more likely to pursue a creative occupation, according to this study. Someone whose family income is $1 million is nearly 10 times or 90 percentage points more likely to go into a creative profession than someone whose family income is $100,000. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing you nailed, space. People who are given encouragement, space, and ability to practice creativity are more creative because it is not a trait, it is a process. So, the myth of the left-right brain thing, anybody can be creative. You can train it up. Probably not genetic. Probably doesn't live in your heart. Mostly
you
lives in your brain.
right-handed people out there, take heart. You're not destined to be accountants if that's not what you want to do.
You don't have to do that.
You don't have to only work with math. You can paint if you like. You can make music.
If you're a painter and you want to go work with math, don't feel put in a box.
How many of these things are self-reinforcing, right? Where we learn this very silly, outdated notion of left-right hemisphere, and then we go, oh, I'm left-handed. That's why I'm bad at math, That's the thing that drives me nuts because I talk about this all the time. But math, I think, is more akin to learning a language than it is to something that you just are good at naturally. Some people have an aptitude for languages, sure. But you can get better at math with practice. I've watched it happen. Yeah. So, but how many people are like, oh, well, I'm more of an artistic type. Therefore, I can't.
They might prefer artists.
Yeah.
They might prefer art because they know it. They understand it. That doesn't mean that they have to be. So, people in the audience, if you want to try it, go get a pottery wheel. Go draw something. It doesn't matter.
I encourage you to make shitty art.
Yes.
I think you should go out there and you should make the shittiest art because you enjoy doing it.
Because it's not for anybody else. It's like dancing. Just do it.
Just do it.
Why not?
Just do it's okay.
Who cares?
Did you enjoy it? Right? You don't have to make money from it someday.
Did you close your rings? Whatever you need to do to feel good about it.
And you'll get better at it just by doing it more. So go make shitty art. We're going to need a lot of bleeps in this section, Kyle.
Yeah, sorry, Kyle.
But that's how passionate I feel about it. You should go.
I love the passion. So, the very, very end here. Several of the studies, lit reviews, and op-ed pieces from the scientists and others that I read to try and answer Meredith's question. The most important thing when it comes to creativity is to give it space, to understand it's a process. Mind wandering is important for creativity. You cannot force it. You have to let yourself do it. We have to let our brains chill so that default mode network gets engaged. If you ever, like Julian, you mentioned being fixated on something, trying to solve that problem, the best way is to literally take a break. Go have a sleep. Go take a walk. Do something else. Your creativity will bubble up. That's creativity too. Creativity is in everything. It's problem solving. It's art. It's the colors you pick for a presentation for a really boring finance thing that I'm not interested in, but you're super interested in. Creativity. It also, interior designer who has the perfect eye. Creativity. They're both equally creative. Just use it differently, which I think is awesome. The only one who's maybe less creative is Bill Smith thinking that plasma could go through a crystal without... Just look it up, Bill. We know it can't do that.
No, I don't know. He's creative by just, you know what? I'm going to make up whatever I want about how matter's going to behave. I don't need your...
He did have to invent an entire technological basis for a toy that was probably made of, like, a bunch of greeblies and kit smashing.
Yep.
Is it kit bashing? Kit bashing.
It is. It's like building on another creative process, right? Where some artist who was involved in making the props, then like making a book about how it's actually going to work, gets handed off to another like writer, creative thinker, and I don't know. That's fun.
That's cool. That's fun to think about. It's like they start you on like this path.
That's the nature of it, right? Taking something that already exists and turning it into something new, and then somebody sees that and turns it into something new. It's a never-ending cascade of human expression, and it's beautiful, damn it.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of That's Absurd, Please Elaborate. This show was created, written, and produced by me, Trace Dominguez.
And me, Julian Huguet.
It was also produced and edited by the wonderful, creative, and Star Wars agnostic Kyle Sisk.
Special thanks to listeners who submitted questions featured in this episode. That would Meredith and Nick, and of course Alfonso for being the Lord of Democracy and selecting Nick's
our super delegate
question in the Patriot. The King of Democracy. The autocrat of the people's voice
I think it's the
in
Duke
this
of
one
democracy.
particular instance. But I swear we won't do it again. To the rest of you considering joining our Patreon, which is, by the way, once again at patreon.com/that'sabsurdshow. We've got some new subscribers that we need to shout out, as well as some returning ridiculous researchers. So, special shout out to new subscriber, and they of mermaid tattoo fame, Riley.
Of course, and also Carol's.
We think we're saying that right. I don't know.
I hope.
There's an L and a V and an S, and I'm not totally sure. This one, though, I've got this on lock. Squinkle butt.
I love that. And thank you, Irene, for joining.
Yeah! I'm not going to make a Dexy's Midnight Runners joke here, because I
Why
bet Irene's heard it a bajillion times.
And thank you, Clark, with an E, Clarky,
Hey, it's just Clark.
and also Gerald.
And Gerald.
And then our absurd administrators, Lee and Les. Thank you so
Who
much.
else? Also, Lee, speaking of Mackinac, Lee sent us fudge.
That's
from
right.
Lee's Fudge Shop.
It's so good. If you're on Mackinac Island, go to Mae's Fudge.
Not only
they did not pay us
supporting-
for this.
Supporting the pod on Patreon directly and still listening, amazingly. If I were Lee and my question got answered, I'd tap out. I'm like, well, thanks anyway. I'm going to
See
go
ya.
back to my fudge paradise.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
Under the watchful eye of this fort. But no, Lee took the extra step of sending us fudge. So thank you,
That was
Lee.
very nice of him, and it's delicious.
Thanks to all who submitted questions, and if you want to submit a question, there are a multitude of ways for you to do so. You can email us at hello@that'sabsurdshow.com. You can visit our website, that'sabsurdshow.com/ask. You can call us 302-TAPE-SHOW, TAPESHO. And of course, if you look in the show notes, there's a little form that you can fill out, so that's probably the easiest way. Probably should have led with that.
Yeah, there's also now comments on Spotify, apparently, so you can leave a question there. We do check them, but we don't check as often as the ones that come directly to us. So please leave your question there, engagement for the engagement gods, but also, you can send them to us directly if you have a pressing concern. And also, while you're at it, leave us a review, please. Wherever you are listening right now, hit a thumbs up, hit a follow button, hit a plus, hit a heart, hit a star, hit a whatever thing it is that's on the thing that you're doing that says you like us. Very Sally Field style. We want to be loved. And a special thanks to those listening on Nebula. Nebula listeners get access to ad-free versions of episodes. They can support us and other independent creators just by listening to the show. If you want to do that too and support the show, visit go.nebula.tv/that'sabsurdshow to join, and we get credit for that. So thank you for that. But what do we say at the end of every episode, Julian?
Make shitty art. Lord knows we do. Somebody's gonna like it, okay? And if it's just you, that's fine. I'm still on this.
Fine.
That's fine.
I was going to say candles are plasma. So birthday parties are a plasma injection system.
Birthday parties are a little bit of the sun that you just orbited around.
Ooh, nice.